Greetings, all! Today, we'll be examining the common, normal flying-type Pokemon Pidgey, the Tiny Bird Pokémon, its relatively uncommon evolution Pidgeotto, and its relatively rare final evolution Pidgeot, the latter two collectively known as the Bird Pokémon. Though they might seem rather unassuming to some, the members of the Pidgey family are interesting birds that can prove to be good additions to any beginner trainer's team if needed.
Pidgey have small bodies covered in light brown feathers from their chest to the underside and the tips of their wings, with darker brown feathers covering their backs, the base of their wings, their tail feathers, and a crest on the top of their head. They have tiny pink feet with 3 toes with white claws, 2 in the front and 1 in the back for stability, as well as a small pink beak, black eyes, and a streak of black feathers that runs from the sides of their eyes down to the bottom of their jaw. The evolved form, Pidgeotto, have the same sort of plumage across their bodies as well as a similar leg form, but they are noted for their larger size and wingspan. In addition, they now have a large crest of pink feathers on the top of their head that rakes back smoothly towards their back, and their tail feathers now have a brilliant pink and yellow striped form to them. Their final evolution, Pidgeot, are almost identical in form to their pre-evolved form, and thus operate in much the same way. The only major differences are that their tail feathers have now become purely vermilion in color, and their head crest of feathers has changed to stripes of vermilion and yellow, trailing back across nearly the entire rest of their body length. It is lastly noted that these creatures have access to a Mega Evolved state, and in this form, their upper and lower body feathers lighten in color, as the tips of their wing and tail feathers turn blue, their eyes and the base of their tail feathers turn a vivid pink color, and their head crest takes on a wilder and spikier look to it, with a massive ribbon-like pink feather extension that trails far beyond the length of their own body when in flight.
The members of the Pidgey family are quite similar to several different types of birds in terms of both anatomy and behavior, so it is difficult to really classify them alongside any direct relatives.
Nonetheless, it seems that these birds share a considerable amount in common with 2 particular types of bird, namely ospreys and homing pigeons. Like ospreys, Pidgey will eventually only hunt fish once they completely grow up into Pidgeot, but at the moment, their small body size prevents that from being much of a possibility. Instead, Pidgey and Pidgeotto mainly stick to small insects and bug-type Pokemon. On that same note, Pidgeys share with homing pigeons the ability to readily discern where they are at any moment and travel straight back to the nest regardless of how far away they might have flown. This tends to be quite useful when Pidgey begins swarming within thick forests in search of emerging insect prey at the beginning of spring, as they otherwise would generally be unable to find their way back out. Plus, nesting within a forest is rarely ever a wise move for them, particularly if there are no local Pidgeotto or Pidgeot in the area to offer protection. Unlike their relatively docile pre-evolved form, Pidgeotto are vicious hunters and will often travel great distances just to find a single meal. More importantly though, Pidgeotto are highly territorial and will viciously assault any threat that dares to enter their immediate vicinity unannounced. In the wild and when defending, Pidgeotto primarily rely on their claws to deal the most damage, as their sharp talons are capable of easily ripping large gouges into soft flesh, though they are relatively ineffective against even weak armor. If they have the opportunity, Pidgeotto will even occasionally use their beak to peck at intruders as a warning, preferring not to completely destroy them or blow them away with a whirlwind technique unless it is deemed absolutely necessary.
If Pidgeotto are pressed into a combat role, they generally rely on their tackle and wing attack moves to deal the most damage up close, while from afar they rely on their gust attack.
With Pidgeot, it really is just more of the same for behavior, but it is interesting to note though that what most bird keepers and trainers enjoy and treasure the most about Pidgeot are their feathers. Unlike most bird feathers, the feathers of Pidgeot are coated with a glossy compound that gives them a characteristically bright sheen in the light, making them almost dazzle in bright sunlight. While the compound is technically only there to produce the film of air that enabled Pidgeot to fly at incredible speeds, it has nonetheless made Pidgeot exceptionally popular among trainers because of the magnificent appearance that grants them, particularly in regards to their head plumage. In turn, Pidgeot have learned to use this compound to their advantage in the wild when attempting to intimidate others. By fully exposing their wings to the sunlight, Pidgeot can become virtual beacons in the light and can make even grown men cower in fear. Thankfully for trainers, Pidgeot are not all show, and in fact possess exceptionally strong chest muscles that allow them to flap their wings both extremely fast and hard, to generate a potent windstorm capable of blowing down small houses with ease.
This is assisted by the strong eyesight that the members of the family possess, as well as their capacity to use erratic movements when confused to make themselves much harder to hit, in turn possessing keen eye and tangled feet as base abilities. While those with exceptionally strong chest muscles and great mental resilience and focus can also have access to big pecs as a hidden ability.
In looking at their stats though, in the case of Pidgeot, it can be seen that the overall combat effectiveness is quite limited, with their forms not being the best suited for combat of any professional type. They at least have decent stamina to them and are quite fast thankfully, their base HP stat being above average for a fully evolved flying type Pokemon, and the base speed stat being above average for a fully evolved normal and flying type Pokemon, so there are at least some small merit to them, even if they are not equipped for serious professional combat in many cases. Despite how imposing the evolved forms may appear, Pidgey are actually quite docile and prefer not to fight unless it's a matter of life and death. As such, it is difficult to find these creatures out in the open, as they almost always keep themselves hidden within trees or among tall grass. If threatened by a predator or opponent in the wild though, Pidgey will use their small but powerful wings to whip up a huge cloud of dust before blowing it straight into the opposition's face. Aside from being relatively difficult to avoid if one's eyes are not closed, this makeshift sand attack technique can cause others to temporarily choke on their own air, granting Pidgey more than enough time to escape. Interestingly enough, this cloud of dust has enough power behind it to actually dislodge small insects from surrounding blades of grass, or force them out into the open for the sake of finding breathable air, making it an ideal technique for Pidgey that are hunting in the wild. If they cannot distract the opposition, Pidgey will use what little body strength they have to deliver powerful tackle attacks at close range, or, if they have the luxury of room and a little bit of battle experience, strike from afar with decently strong gust attacks. Once Pidgey grow old enough, their wing strength will eventually develop to the point where they can actually utilize a whirlwind technique in battle. Trainers should take this as a good sign, as it means that Pidgey is very close to evolution.
Pidgeotto are loners by nature, and will generally claim a fairly large swath of forest or even fieldland as their territory, making their nest in the exact center of that territory.
Pidgeotto have excellent eyesight that allows them to keep track of the movements of prey hundreds of feet below them, granting them an element of surprise that few insects and small bug-type Pokemon, which comprise the majority of their diet, are able to counter before death. Every single day, Pidgeotto will tirelessly fly in a circular pattern throughout their territory in search of prey. Once a suitable organism is found, Pidgeotto will quickly dive down and snatch the unsuspecting victim from the ground with their sharp talons before choking them to death or severing the windpipe and or jugular while ascending again. In some cases, this technique is effective enough to allow Pidgeotto to even snatch Pokemon like Execute, which are one of the few non-animal organisms predatory birds feast on because of their flavor and nutritional content, and otherwise often prove very difficult for traditional birds to handle. Once a suitable prey has been snatched and killed, Pidgeotto will fly all the way back to the nest, even if it happens to be 60 miles away, before finally taking the time to enjoy their meal. They usually have to repeat this process several times a day to fulfill their appetites, but since they generally stick to young bug types like Caterpie and Weedle, there is rarely ever a shortage of food for them in the wild.
Much like Pidgeotto, Pidgeot are active hunters and able to see the movement of prey several thousand feet below them thanks to their exceptional eyesight, granting them a degree of surprise unseen among many other predatory bird Pokemon.
In turn, Pidgeot primarily rely on their razor-sharp talons in close quarters to deal the most damage, though they are still rather ineffective at getting through even weak armor. However, Pidgeot are notably different from their pre-evolved forms in that they are not very territorial, primarily because they do not hunt insects but fish. In particular, Pidgeot prefer the somewhat greasy but otherwise tender meat of Magikarp, which are readily plucked from most streams and ponds with little trouble. As such, it is relatively rare to ever see a Pidgeot descend from the sky and onto the ground to confront anyone, preferring instead to only attack those who dare to violate their immediate airspace. Even if one managed to find a Pidgeot though, the chances of catching it are exceptionally slim because of the species' ability to literally fly at speeds equal to Mach 2, or twice the speed of sound. Pidgeot are able to do this without harming themselves, because the feathers naturally create a film of air around their bodies while in flight that both reduces drag and protects the area immediately surrounding a Pidgeot from much of the complications that would normally arise at such speeds. This is particularly important for trainers because it makes Pidgeot one of the few bird Pokemon that human trainers can ride on at exceptionally high speeds without experiencing major complications, as the film of air that naturally covers their bodies during the fast flight also covers and protects any rider from the effects of the movement. Unfortunately, the effects of high-speed travel are not completely negated in flight, so first-time riders often experience feelings of nausea or discomfort that might lead them to accidentally let go of their steed, in turn resulting in their immediate ejection from their ride.
It is lastly noted that Pidgeot is one of the only select number of Pokemon known to be capable of undergoing the process of Mega Evolution.
Triggered by the presence of a held Pidgeotite, Mega Evolution does not really change the overall anatomy of Pidgeot much, but nonetheless does make them a viable threat worth fearing in battle. In Mega Evolving, Pidgeot grow considerably in size, and the feathers become adorned with bright colors, most of all the feathers that make up their beautiful head plumage. It does not appear that these special markings reflect any special powers, so it is likely that they are merely there either for the sake of attractiveness when mating, which seems a bit hard to believe seeing as Mega Evolution is usually only temporary, or, more likely, are there for intimidating opponents in battle. This seems to fit with their personality as well, as Mega Pidgeot are considerably more aggressive than their normal counterparts and will actively fight anything that dares to attack them or enter their territory unannounced. This rarely ever goes well with the opposing party, as Mega Pidgeot possess massive muscles in their wings that allow them to flap them hard enough to whip up hurricane-strength winds in a matter of moments, literally blowing away the competition before they can even prepare an attack. Thankfully, Mega Pidgeot can still be controlled just as well as normal Pidgeot, though greater caution is still nonetheless recommended. In terms of stats, the addition of stronger muscles in the body and an abnormal power to utilize special attacks more efficiently has the effect of slightly increasing Mega Pidgeot's base defense and special defense stats, moderately increasing the base speed stat, and cataclysmically increasing the base special attack stat. In turn, they gain the highest base special attack stat out of all normal type Pokemon, tied with Drampa and Porygon Z. In addition, the sudden personality shift to an aggressive form is so strong in Mega Pidgeot that they will willingly attack their target without holding back or even attempting to dodge incoming strikes, effectively converting the ability to no guard. This might not work out too well for Mega Pidgeot in terms of taking damage, but it nonetheless makes them a viable threat when it comes to the normally inaccurate but absolutely devastating Hurricane attack.
Birds and I never really get along all that well, but while the members of this family might seem pretty basic for a lot of people, being basic isn't always a bad thing if it works for them in the wild. These creatures seem to enjoy just living the life of a typical beast of their kind, eating small insects and fish and the like without really getting in people's faces, though their sand attack technique can be the bane of many young trainers' existence if they can't be taken out quickly. This might be seen as a minor annoyance to some, but they can still make themselves quite irritating with it, and thus find a seat on the teams of many young trainers before they can make better use of their other moves later on in life. They are also quite easy to raise for the most part, and thus make for great pets, though cages are usually not an option once they start to evolve and become both larger and stronger than humans might be able to handle as pets alone. Thankfully, these birds can get access to some pretty interesting and potent moves like Twister and Hurricane as they develop, so they have a few special traits to them that helps them to stand out. There are even more than a few species of Pokemon that can Mega Evolve, so while they might seem plain to some, these birds can certainly prove to be a hassle to deal with if their powerful wind-based attacks and sharp features can't be readily countered.
A classic staple in the teams of many trainers from the Japan area, and more than deserving of the otherwise basic but clean species title, the members of the Pidgey family are classic birds that can make for good friends for those just starting out on their journey as a Pokemon trainer. They might not have a lot of bells and whistles to them, but sometimes simplicity just works, and that is more than the case with these special birds.
Just do yourself a favor and make sure that you keep close to them and hold on for dear life if you decide to take an adult for a ride. These birds might be able to fly extremely fast, but that might be your downfall if you lose your grip and can't keep a hold on them while going beyond the speed of sound.
Thank you for watching this video. It brings me great joy to be able to speak to you all in the world each and every time we meet like this, to explore the many different facets of both the world of Pokemon as we know it, and the world as we live it, through every adventure we have with Pokemon by our side. If you'd like to, please subscribe, ring the bell and all that jazz to keep yourself updated on content uploads and other materials of the like. You can also follow me on Twitter if you'd like to know right away when something new is uploaded, and my written works, from which most of this is based on, can be found on DeviantArt. Links to both can be found in the description down below. Remember that the world of Pokemon is a place full of wonder and mystery, and you never know what to expect. So, stay vigilant, keep watch, and always be prepared for the unexpected. Until next time, trainers and friends of all sorts, have a wonderful time.